Hello and welcome back to Season 12 in Episode 12 of this Bristol Rovers career on Football Manager 26. In the interest of time, I'm going to quickly scroll through some of the transfers that we made at the end of last season, all young players that have come in and then either gone into the under 21s or to be loaned out. We spent a little bit more on Abdelaziz, who's then, I think, on loan to Udinese. I think that's what that means when it shows the wrong way around. Uh, a whole load more there. Um, One that we spent a bit more money on, Roxham, is a bit more likely to feature in the first team this season. The other one here of note really is Flego, who I brought in as a winger, but because we are desperately short of left backs, because the board kept making deals with me and telling me they were going to take over a transfer for me. All three attempts they did at that fell through, so we've got a winger at left back on our return to the Premier League, which could be a bit of a gamble. We'll have to see what happens. And then the last one here, Martin van der Voort, has come in from Ipswich to be our starting goalkeeper. Very injury prone, could also be a mistake. So we'll have to see how that goes. If there are any other names here that needs to introduce you to, I will show you them in the team. And then we loaned out a few of those guys and a few other players. Um, yeah, Abdelaziz usually being one of them at the end of last season, which takes us to this season. And there are some quite exciting transfers in here. Starting with the free agents, the one that I just couldn't say no to. Elliot Anderson is back. He's only played 5 games for England in this save. I'm sure in real life it will be a lot more than that by the time he's 33. But he is back and into our midfield. Ross Wright has come in at right back, also on a free. I think that was quite a good signing, really. He had been playing for Southampton regularly in the Premier League last season, so a pretty good signing there. Um, some young players, Scott Reed coming to be our backup goalkeeper. None of the others are going to feature regularly, apart from Abel Cisse, who has come in to play on the wing and making a good start already, as we'll see with 4 appearances. Arnie Engels, currently with Celtic in real life, has come in from Brentford and has made a few regular starts. And then we spent 400k on Brian Ryan from Spurs, who hasn't featured yet either. Um, Not a huge amount of spending given the amount of money we had. Obviously, we did quite a lot at the end of last season. And then in terms of the outgoings, of course, there was a young player who Everton met his release clause, so he had to go. Lots of others have gone out on loan. Francisco has gone to Berg. Obviously, he was the backup goalkeeper, but 5.5 million for a backup goalkeeper was a little bit too good. Our first choice of goalkeeper last season, Abramovich, has gone to Damak for 8 million, which is why we signed Van der Voort. Nick Evans had his release clause met by Man City, and then Mail Williams to Ipswich. It was an interesting sell. That he's actually his value's gone up quite a lot, but he was someone that didn't have really the potential to make it with us. Neither did Tobin Adobele. Um, Although those were last summer, so why is it still showing me them? No, those were the summer just gone. Anyway, um, not great transfer business, I wouldn't say, but again, some of that was forced on us. We couldn't really do a huge amount other than what we did. So if I take you to the matchday tactics, this is the starting 11 with everyone who is available. Van der Voort in goal, I've shown you right. Pavlychuk has now come in at centre back, taking Van der Berg's place, who is now on the bench. Byfield keeps his place. Alfredo is our emergency left back. Totally, well, almost certainly in midfield. Avon Ebong didn't have a great season last season, but was our best player in terms of ability. Ernie Engels and Lilith Anderson joined him there. Savic keeps his place on the left, with Cisse coming in on the right, and Ahori remains up front. On the bench, a young player, Yigit Gazici, a Turk who has come in and played a little bit as a well, he can play pretty much anywhere, as you can see. Brown again is our best left back because we couldn't recruit anyone else, but to be honest, he has started quite well in the games he's played. Segovia has come in. I put him as a defensive midfielder on free, but actually he is a useful attacking midfielder with now 108 caps for Venezuela. Um, Sani was the Brazilian that played a little bit last season. He's starting to develop. I should hopefully take that spot. Roberts is still around, as is Kelly, who came in last season, and actually Kelly will probably take the starting spot from Mahori as the season goes on. In fact, he may already be a better fit there. Anyway, we've had to keep Hewitt around to be a backup left back. Roxham is a right back who can also play anywhere in midfield, a Croatian who is going to feature, I think, fairly regularly this season. Valencia is a winger, a Spanish winger who hasn't yet featured, and ideally I would have sent him on loan, but New York was interested. Um, Brianzo, an attacking midfielder that was around last season, Chilean, and then Anderson, who played a little bit last season and can play anywhere in midfield as well. As for our start to the season, if I take to the fixture schedule, it's not been great, but there are some upsides. I don't know how we ended up going from runners-up in the Carabao Cup to being knocked out by Plymouth in the first round, but so be it. That's one less thing to worry about. We pushed Liverpool reasonably close on an early goal, but they came back. We absolutely dominated the game against Fulham, which is pleasing before we did another goal, and then pushed Villa close at Villa. So only 1 point from the first 9, but having said that, we're not out of our depth. Hopefully Palace at home is a game where we can pick up some points. But we're going to have to find some points on the road. It's difficult, our first run of home games is. Anyway, I will be back at the end of the January transfer window, where hopefully we aren't quite as far adrift as we were this time 2 years ago at the bottom of the Premier League, and hopefully this year we can stay up. Hello, I am back with a reasonably positive Premier League update. Obviously, you saw a bit of a disastrous start to the season. That continued. We didn't win a game in September or October, and we were a long way adrift of the relegation zone after the first 3 months. But then, a 1-0 home win over Newcastle. We did change the tactics at this point to try and be a little more defensively solid and play on the counter-attack. Was a few points on the board. A huge defeat away at Southampton and at home to Chelsea. I think it was probably around here, the Arsenal game, where I started to try and be a little bit more defensive, and it did seem to work. We beat Wolves at home, and then wins at home against Liverpool in what was a really solid defensive performance to keep a clean sheet, as we did also against Sunderland after leading early, and then a win away at Sheffield United, which all happened around the same time that we had a tycoon takeover. So the money that's come in isn't game-changing, but it is certainly useful, and I'll show you what we've done with it shortly. And what that then developed was an excellent January in which we won 4 out of 5 games and were a little bit unlucky to lose against Fulham. So, if I take you to the Premier League table, things are looking much better. We're 13th on 28 points, again with the aim being survival from 40 being enough. We don't need a huge amount more wins to achieve that for this season, and that's all I'm looking for, is to stay up after we failed to do that last time. We did have a bit of a dry patch in terms of scoring, so my priorities, as well as a left back, as I mentioned, was also a centre forward, and I did show you, I can't remember the guy's name, who scored a hat-trick against Middlesbrough, for Middlesbrough against us in the playoffs. He is now Man City's number 9, so that didn't work. But we have been busy in January. I'll show you first of all the players that have moved on. So a few players that didn't really feature. So Segovia definitely fits that. Went to Trabzonspor for 200k after we signed them on a free. We also let Palencia go, who was a young player that didn't train very well, hadn't really played, wanted to leave, so I let him go. He was 25 anyway, so 1.3 million and good profit. And then some young players that never really made up to scratch, Hewitt and Doofus. And then James Hill, who's been around for quite a while, was quite a long-serving, I was going to say long-serving, but he was only with us for a season. Had a very good season with us in the Championship. He ended up, after being on loan at Leicester in the first half of the season, going to Derby for 150k. So a lot of profit there. And then a couple of younger players out on loan. Malbo is a goalkeeper who's gone out on loan. Gazici is a guy that we picked up from, in fact I'll show you him, I think he came from Turkey. Yeah, came from Fenerbahce and has gone back there on loan, having not really featured last season. He may well go permanently at the end of the year anyway. And then Stannard, Birch, Martin, Ward, Gauto, all young players out on loan. Although Gauto is an interesting one because we signed him and loaned him back to Independiente. He ended up as the South American Player of the Year last season, which, having already scouted him, made me think he was someone that we should look at trying to bring in. can we see that if we go to milestones? I wonder if I can see his awards. We can. South American Footballer of the Year. And when you look at players that have won this previously in real life, Lucas Moura, Malcolm, Julian Alvarez, Galeno, these are all good European top flight players. So I thought he was one to move on, and he's gone back to Independiente where he is scoring goals and should hopefully feature for us next season. Other big signings. Bruno Martin, again, another one that has come in and then gone back to racing. He's a left back. I was going to use him this season, but because we were able to sign Jens Kurt, who came in from Heidenheim, he has come in and been our left back and started the season quite well. Started his career with us quite well in the second half of the season for 32 million. And our big centre forward, Poyraz Yildirim, is a Turk who has scored a fair amount of goals for them. Has got quite a good goal scoring record. I've been thinking for a while, if we're going to play a bit more defensively, we could do with a big target up front to try and hold the ball up, and he is 190 centimetres, so he is perfect. And although he hasn't scored, he has started very well. I think he's got a couple of man of the matches, or one man of the match performance, and 3 assists. So that has been a good start in terms of those 2 signings. If I take you very quickly to the tactics, we are working with 2 systems in games that I think we can win at home. We're playing the 4-2-3-1 that we had already, and you can see there Kurt and Poyraz have come in. If we are away, or if we're playing in a more difficult game, I move back to this 4-3-3 that's a counter-attacking formation. Avon Ekbong has been out there, although I have been using Pisani on the right and then Savage on the left. That's how this would look like that when we go more defensively. It's going reasonably well, and the 2 new signings seem to have made an impact. They are 2 highest match rating players, and we've had a bit of a clear out in terms of other players as well. The 2 strikers that you saw before were Ahori, who went on, and Kelly. Sorry, both Ahori and Kelly had awful goal scoring runs. You could see how low their match ratings are, and that was a big part of the reason why we weren't winning. But we now are in a place where we've got a guy up front who hopefully will start scoring goals to add his assists. But a very good January update, and I will be back at the end of the season where hopefully we are able to stay in the Premier League for another season. Hello, and I bring you back at the end of May to show you that despite a kind of fairly mixed set of results, we quite comfortably achieved our goal of staying in the Premier League. I brought you back here because, interestingly, the 2-1 win on the final day against Spurs was enough to prevent them winning the Premier League title. Man United played a couple of days later for some reason. I don't know why they played after the end of the season, but they did, and United won the title instead. Spurs have already won it a couple of years ago, so it's not a huge deal for them. But reasonably good results. If I take you back actually to that page, it's a little bit inconsistent when you look at who our good results came against. But if I take you to the end of January, the FA Cup was disappointing. We lost away at Barnsley, but I did play a weakened team to focus on the league. And we won games like away at Chelsea, but then lost away at Wolves. Couple of wins here you could expect, but maybe home to Forest should have been a winnable game. And then obviously the 2-1 win at home to Spurs was a bit of a shock given that they were top at the time. In terms of in fact, I haven't shown you the table. Let me show you the table. It was on the side there, I think, but we did it quite comfortably. We finished 11th, and the next step really has got to be to kind of establish ourselves as a mid-table team, and if not, look a little bit higher up towards ending up in Europe. The cup competitions, I think, will give a better go next season as well, given what kind of stronger team that we'll hopefully have should be able to compete across more fronts. A few players out of contract. We're going to let go of Jared Roberts, who has been a long servant of the club. He's been there since 2030-31, played a lot of games, but isn't quite a Premier League level. I gave him Elliot Anderson and Finlay Anderson all a bit of a send-off in the final game, substituting them off for a round of applause. Archie Brown is also out of contract, but has been injured. But is not again one of those older players that's on quite a lot of money that we could do with moving on now. Interesting to see actually that he is on a lot of money compared to a lot of the other players who are substantially more useful for us. If I take you to the selection info and appearances, it's Byfield and Pavlychuk who are the combination that have been our centre-back pair most of the season. I did give Sepp van der Berg the final game as he is retiring, but those two with Van der Voort in goal gave us a pretty solid base that allowed us to be defensive enough in some of those big games. Anderson, Engels in the midfield, and Ross Wright has kind of established himself as the right back, but he may be someone that we look to replace in the summer. Goals wise, Bassani and Savic were our top scorer after I praised Yildirim, who had 3 assists in his first 3 games but no goals. He failed to pick up another assist and also went on a long barrel run without a goal before finally scoring in the end up on 4. Average rating's not quite of the calibre that we saw last season, which is odd actually given how much better we've done. But Jens Kurt stood out after we bought him in the winter, and Ross Wright up there as well as Byfield. And Beardmore, who actually has established himself not only as club captain but as our longest serving player. He actually came through our very first youth intake back in the 25-26 season. Um, Made his debut for us after 3 loans in the Championship in 2030-31, and 6 years later is now captain and a regular Premier League player with lots of Northern Ireland caps. He might be one that would begin to phase out soon, given that he is 27, but I think if we can keep him around for the majority of the season, we'd like to win the Champions League with someone who was at the club right back at the beginning. Assist-wise, Fago no longer needed as a left back, established himself on the left wing, and was also quite an attacking midfielder. Given that Ebon wants to move on, that might be something we look at in the 4-2-3-1 moving forwards. Lots of transfers already arranged for the July 1st turnover, lots of pre-arranged transfers, and then also a couple of players that we've signed on pre-contracts, but I will save them for the next episode, which will be out in the next few days. If you have enjoyed what you've seen, please leave a like and subscribe for the next one, and I will see you in the next episode.